Hey there, I'm Kevin Downey, and I run an agency called Kevin M. Downey, where we help B2B companies with their sales and marketing efforts. You can visit our website at kevinmdowney.com. Okay, today's video: how do you build a sales team for a B2B company in 2024? How do you go about structuring your sales team and thinking about the roles you need to have? Obviously, we talked a lot about this in another video in using email and other strategies to drive inbound leads. But apart from that, how do you really think about your sales team structure? What should the moving parts look like? Who should the people be? What do they do? And then, of course, do they need to be in the United States? Sometimes we're having to go down that path that reps in the United States for the salaries they require for some things within your sales team. It just doesn't make sense, especially for small business where the ROI on the rep becomes more crucial and you got to get the ROI out of them quicker. So let's talk about sales team structure. So in the other video, I did talk about some of this at length, but think about your prospect list size, your ongoing relationship with customers. Does your sales team have an ongoing relationship with a customer base? And when you take those things into account, and whether or not you're using email, which I always recommend high volume email to drive inbound leads to really help because it's so hard to get a hold of decision makers today. When you take those things into account, how do you build a sales team, right? What does it look like in terms of where do you hire? What kind of talent are you looking for? How much does experience matter? And do you have to look outside the United States for maybe remote reps outside the United States just for a lower base salary? So a couple of things on this that I would say is, first of all, does your sales team have an ongoing relationship with the customer, right? So are they building a book of business, a book of customers that they're going to deal with? They're going to be continually reselling to, filling in orders, cross-selling, upselling, so on and so forth. Realistically, every month, at worst, every quarter, are they handling a book of business that's their customer base? And when they hit 250, 300 customers, whatever the number is, they really don't need to acquire many more customers. That's what they can kind of handle. So we call that an account executive, account manager kind of role, right? So when you have those sorts of sales reps, right, those reps may need to be remote or may need to be local or territorial in the United States, or it's possible that they can be fully remote. Either way, and of course, if they can be remote, you could bring them in-house and call them an inside sales team and just bring them in-house into the office. But when we think about that sales team structure, okay, that account manager, account executive kind of role, again, whether they're doing face-to-face or they can work, fully remotely or virtually with customers, let's think about and talk about on that side, how do we hire those type of people? So on the local and territorial side, you're certainly experience has value, right? But because of the low numbers of candidates that might have the exact experience or background that you are looking for, that proven commodity, a lot of times it makes more sense to hire talent over that specific experience. In other words, talent and drive and circumstances in life becomes a better play for you as an organization to acquire that rep, train them, coach them up, and keep them over the long haul, and certainly probably more or less expensive at that point than someone who is a very proven commodity in your industry, right? So it comes down to what kind of budget do you have? What does the talent level look like in that territory or local area? Do you have that experience out there? Do you want to, relocate someone and make that kind of expenditure? Is a rep that's 50 to 75,000 that's more of green, and you're hiring purely on talent and drive and personality? Is that a better play than a rep that's maybe more proven, experienced, seasoned, and you're looking at a base salary of, let's say, 125 or 150,000? Those things all have to be considered when you build that account manager, account executive team, right? Now, if they can be fully remote, the same questions still apply, but we have a much bigger pool of talent to look at, right? So we're certainly going to find the reps with the experience. We know that they want to work remotely from home. There's a huge demand from the job seeker market for that. But again, I would always look at what are the salary requirements of the individuals that are those seasoned, experienced representatives versus the up and comers that maybe have a lot lower salary requirement and are looking for an opportunity, maybe because they're young, a little more energy, a little more drive, not always, but they're really hungry, right? And sometimes that's a better play for you as an organization, and certainly something that we talk to clients about when we're recruiting sales talent for their team. Now, when we talk about adding in a layer of BDR, SDR, and again, I talked about this in another video of using automated email and when you hire a BDR, SDR team. But let's talk about, like, if you're going to have a BDR, SDR team, where do they come from? How do you hire them? The same things have to be considered. How badly do you really want them to be in office versus them being able to be remote? Remote is a lot easier to hire. There's so much talent looking for that. There's such great talent coming through all of the time when we're recruiting for remote positions. Yes, managerially, it's a little bit different. Maybe it's not as attractive to some owners and some sales, VPs of sales and CSOs. But at the end of the day, sometimes it is better to grab the pool of talent, the talent level that's out there, depending upon your industry, than it is necessarily required to bring them in-house and hire them locally. It does really depend on where you're located. What's the talent pool look like coming in your local market? How hard is it to find the talent that you're looking for, and so on and so forth. But if the job can be done remotely with BDR, SDR, it almost always can, should you consider a fully remote position in the United States at that point? That really comes down to where you're located and the pool of talent that's coming through when you're recruiting, right? Now, another layer or question on this is when we bring in BDR, SDR is, should we be looking outside the United States for that kind of role? That all depends on your, probably more than anything, your budget, your financial situation as an organization. If they are going to be doing a lot with inbound leads, it's easier to get ROI out of a BDR, SDR team with inbound leads if they're in the United States, because they've just got a lot more coming through and a lot more connections and things to deal with. So I don't think that that's usually an issue for companies. But of course, you always have great talent in other countries. We recruit Latin America, the Caribbean, South Africa very, very heavily for our clients and get a lot of great talent from there, right? And on that note, now we talk about more of an outbound BDR, SDR team, which we call in our organization, our agency, we call that a BDR. An outbound BDR having to do cold outreach and prospecting, and you might be running automated email in a low volume to bring in some leads, but you need that BDR to go out and find decision makers, qualify them, find out pain point, and so on and so forth. Should you hire that kind of role in the United States, whether in office or remote? Not always. I mean, it really does depend on your budget as an organization. It is much, much harder to get ROI out of reps doing outbound in the United States than it is reps in, say, Latin America. We do a ton in, Central America, a lot of reps in Dominican Republic. The fact of the matter is that reps in the United States, BDR, even if you're using it as a launching pad into your sales roles, kids coming out of school certainly are commanding at least $50,000 a year, and in most cases closer to 75 or higher. That's a pretty tough big nut to crack on pure outbound, right? With very light inbound to supplement that for them, versus reps in, say, Central America, Latin America in general, Caribbean, South Africa, where you've got reps available that are very, very qualified, have worked in business-to-business work, speak wonderful English. Many of them have gone to American universities, come here for school, gone back home, and we're talking base salaries in sometimes below $1,000, but $1,000, $1,500 a month. So you're talking somewhere around $10,000 to $20,000 a year. That's a big difference than somebody that needs to make 50 to 75 in the United States, and you're talking pure outbound. So those are the things you want to consider when you're building your sales team, right? Is where do they need to be located? What kind of compensation are they requiring? How important is experience versus personality, drive, and maybe bringing in somebody greener that you can coach up in that sales role? Can they be remote? And then, of course, on the BDR, SDR side, how important is it and how easy is it for them to be in the United States and for you to get ROI out of that salary, right? If it's, again, a lot of inbound leads coming in, if you're doing very high-powered email, makes it a lot easier to get to turn ROI with reps in the United States. If they're having to do full outbound and it's very manualized outreach, it's a far different game, right? Because the ROI on that, with our connection rates on the phone being so low and email deliverability always tricky for companies, it's something you really have to consider when you're building your sales team, with where you hire and so on and so forth. Okay, hopefully that helps you. If you need any assistance with recruiting, obviously we're glad to help. Email marketing. My agency is Kevin M. Downey, kevinmdowney.com. Appreciate you being here. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks.